Who's stronger, Garrick or a Johnny? If Tyvar would go head-to-head against Elspeth, who would win? Speculation has been a part of fandoms for, well, as long as fandoms have existed. And one of the most popular types of speculation is simple: power levels. This is a common, and commonly heated, aspect of any fan community, but not one that often comes up with regard to Magic. After all, our characters have a convenient, easy-to-understand format that tells us quite easily who would win: power and toughness. Throw in an ability or two for good measure, and it's easy to see that Avacyn would absolutely destroy Silumgar. Now, of course, it's not a perfect system. After all, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who'd believe a random squirrel could kill a fully armed man, but this system is a major part of how the game is played, and most of the time, it works. Now, this doesn't carry over that well to planeswalkers. Planeswalker cards don't usually have power or toughness, and what they're capable of can be quite difficult to determine based on their effects alone. So what, is Angreth creating the Eternals or what? So, if we want to figure out how strong planeswalkers are, we can't just look at their cards. We have to look at their lore. Planeswalkers are the face of the game, and Magic has a lot of them. In this video, I'll be ranking 10 random planeswalkers in the game based primarily on what we know about them in the lore, so that we can have a good idea of how strong they are relative to one another. Now, before we begin, I'll be explaining the ranking system I'm using. It's simple tiers from D to S. Characters placed in the D tier would not be too useful in a fight, whereas those in the S tier are counted among the most powerful beings in the multiverse. Now, this isn't a perfect system, but it's one that works, for videos like this. Please keep in mind that not every planeswalker was eligible. For the sake of convenience, I left out any planeswalker without a card. Sorry, Vernos fans. In addition, I left out all planeswalkers with little or no lore, for reasons I think should be obvious. Now, I can already see that you're rushing down to the comments section, eager to tell me all about how wrong I am and how Domri could totally take down Chandra in a fight. Please remember that this is just for fun. While the rankings themselves are based on my opinions, they're formed from the accomplishments and abilities of the characters, so I am trying to be unbiased. With that said, let's begin with the cat, the myth, the legend, a Johnny. Now, in addition to being an absolutely buff Thundercat wielding a two-headed axe, a Johnny specializes in magic of the soul. He is able to empower and heal allies and affect the deepest essence of his enemies. With this magic and just a little bit of help from some leftover conflux juice, he was able to pull out a victory over the Tyrant of Worlds, Nicol Bolas. Johnny is skilled in combat and has a keen sense of strategy. I doubt he'd have much trouble taking on many of his peers. For that reason, I'll be placing a Johnny in the A tier. The A stands for a Johnny. Next up we have, Jiang. Now, Jiang is that kid with the dog. He has the power to, make the dog stronger. That's really it, as far as we know. The kid's rather helpless without his canine companion, though he can, somehow, bring the dog with him when he planeswalks. Still, not all too impressive, all things considered. Jiang can sit in the D tier. He's not helpless, but he's not exactly a threat. Moving on, Esbeth Tyrell is easily one of the most dangerous planeswalkers to ascend after the mending. Her mental health issues aside, Elspeth has proven time and again to be exceptionally powerful. On Bant, she was able to single-handedly destroy an enemy army, revive the dead, and even helped to slay the mighty Malfagor. Battling on Mirrodin, she confronted her fears and became a walking blender, decimating Phyrexians left and right with ease. Finally, on Theros, Elspeth displayed some of her greatest feats, such as shrugging off the full might of the Sun God, destroying the apocalyptic Hydra Pelucranos, killing the god Xenagos despite her exhaustion, and even battling her way out of the Theros underworld. Elspeth is virtually unbeatable in melee combat, can survive some of the most devastating attacks in the setting, and is capable of widespread devastation to the point where even gods fear her. It's no exaggeration to say that Elspeth sits in the S tier. Now, if only she could get some counseling. With all the damage he's done to the game, you'd be forgiven for thinking Oko belongs in the S tier. Excessive flamboyance aside, Oko does have some neat party tricks. He can shapeshift himself and others, control plants, and can even do some handy mental manipulation. Sadly, he's downright terrible in close combat, and relies almost exclusively on trickery to achieve his goals. Oko and his abs sit in the B tier, though he's a perfect example of someone you shouldn't underestimate despite ranking. Now, Chandra is straightforward. She gets an A grade, and here's why. The chick's a walking natural disaster. We don't see it often, but Chandra is capable of some incredible acts of destruction, and with a little help, she was even able to incinerate 2 Eldrazi Titans. Sure, her intelligence needs some work and she suffers plenty of defeats, but if she lets loose, there's very few other planeswalkers that can match her destructive power. Next up is... how hard is it to say Kythian? Ah well. Gideon Jorah is a lifelong fighter. Though he's got some law magic on his side, he prefers to use his magical invulnerability and the dumbest weapon I've ever seen to fight his enemies. Gideon is kind of a bad tactician. His preferred strategy is to rush into his opponent and hope that they fall down before his shield gives out. This has led to more than a little bit of suffering on his part. Regardless, Gideon is damn handy in a fight. He's just not the best thing out there. He sits comfortably in the B tier, though if he had lived long enough to grow a brain, he might have ended up higher. Huatli rides a dinosaur. That's it, that's her major ability. Yeah, sure, she can sing and she has those stupid axe things, but come on, she rides a dinosaur! That's the coolest shit! Still, she's not the best fighter around, and the dino itself can't actually planeswalk with her. Until she gains some kind of robo-dino or useful magic, Huatli sits in the C tier. Next up is Tybalt, and he... sucks. Look, I know it's a big joke, but it's true. This dude never wins. A few years ago I would have said, yeah, he might be a real threat. He just had a bad case of being in the way of a millennia-old vampire. But no, that defense doesn't work anymore. This edgy gremlin got his ass beat by Chandra's mom. Tybalt sucks so hard, he doesn't get one of the normal tiers. You know what? No, he gets his own tier. Tybalt tier. And he sits there alone. Now, Jace Beleren is the perfect example of someone who's stronger than the writers allow him to be. With his illusion magic, he's only a real threat to idiots. But with his ability to reshape the minds and memories of others, Jace can be an absolutely terrifying force in the multiverse. He shies away from using this power too often, but he's demonstrated on several occasions that he can just turn his enemies into drooling messes. Jace is reserved, but he can be a legitimate threat, so he sits in the A tier. P.S. He was a pirate for a bit, so you know, that helps. Now with this next character, I've got a confession to make. Remember at the beginning, where I said I'd only be ranking characters who got Planeswalker cards? I lied. Remember when I said I'd leave out characters without a lot of lore? I lied. Your old pal Loreseeker pulled a crime and snuck in someone who breaks both rules. But who could it be? Who would compel me to pull off a deception against you, my beloved viewers? You'll be surprised to learn that it's this guy. Yep, this dork. This guy doesn't even have a name. We know next to nothing about him, other than his status as easily the most unlucky planeswalker in existence. Despite that, he's being ranked. His misfortune, as it turns out, isn't some accident. Somehow, this young man ran afoul of Lind, an immortal, cursed witch from Innistrad. Ever since then, she's been transferring curse after curse onto this poor lad, and somehow, he keeps surviving. That resilience and the ability to survive is why I'm handing this nameless chap a B-tier ranking. I hope we learn his name soon. I bet it's Chad. I'll be stopping here for today, but there are many, many more Planeswalkers out there to rank. Would you like to see more videos like this? Do you agree with my rankings? Or do you disagree? Or maybe you just think this was a massive waste of time. Whatever it is, let me know in the comments section below. While you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with your friends. Finally, please check out my Patreon. I genuinely appreciate my patrons' support, and for them, they get to see my lore videos early. Thanks again, and have a great day.